Shannon and beYogi for having me. And thank you to everyone who is tuning in, whether you are here live or watching the recording. I have been very much looking forward to coming back and sharing my third webinar with the beYogi community. So this is such a juicy topic, everyone, and I'm so honored to have you here for it. This is such an important practice that we can use to infuse our teaching. And I loved watching the comments. Many of you have been practicing and teaching, whether you're newer to teaching or you've been teaching for years. So this applies to everyone, whether you're the day one teacher, or you've been teaching for a long, long time. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as Shannon mentioned, if you have questions, please do drop them in the chat as I speak. So please feel free to ask as we're going. I will do my best to address them either in the moment or definitely at the end. We will have time for Q&A. So if you're the type that likes to take notes, you're more than welcome to do so. And we will also be sending out this PowerPoint afterwards. So you will have that resource to refer back to. Someone did ask in the comments a great question if you needed a mat. You do not need a mat for today's discussion. We will have a short guided practice towards the end, but you can do this practice seated, or of course, if you prefer to lie down, it will be a guided mindfulness, breathwork, and body scan practice. Okay, so let me share my screen and we'll get into it. Okay. Alrighty, let me pull back up this chat, pop it in the corner so I can keep an eye on it. All right, so as Shannon mentioned, my name is Ashton. I hold my MFA in creative nonfiction writing, and that's how I created my website, youaligned.com, which is a yoga, wellness, and mindfulness digital magazine. From there, we also offer YA Classes, which is an online yoga, meditation, and movement app. And as a beYogi member, you do receive a great discount to our membership, so I would love for you to check that out if you haven't done so already. I am also a published author, and some of the practices and points that we'll be discussing today come out of my latest book, which I'll share more about at the end. And in addition to that, I am an industry consultant. So I actually work with yoga and meditation teachers and healers in the wellness space to help them start or build their brands and platforms. So, with that said, here is what you can expect from our time together today. First, we're going to learn more about the role of mindfulness and meditation in yoga. And I'm curious if you would like to share in the chat if you have an existing meditation practice and or if you are already familiar with mindfulness, with the concept of mindfulness. All right, so from there, we will go into the scientific benefits of mindfulness, both for students and for you all as teachers. From there, we'll talk about practical ways to integrate mindfulness into your classes and overcome common challenges that you might come up against as a teacher incorporating these aspects. We'll end with a guided mindfulness practice for you. It's just a treat as a teacher to receive, but also it's a great way to learn an example of how you can be incorporating these types of techniques into your classes as well. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. This is wonderful to hear. We got a lot of mixed reviews, so exciting. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll end with some actionable takeaways for you and then time for Q&A. So do be sure to keep those questions at the top of your mind. Okay, so the next thing that I would like to hear from you all is what is your definition of mindfulness? So if anyone has an idea or how you would define mindfulness if you were sharing to your students, would love to hear it. And as you are cultivating, as you're cultivating your response, which you can do in the chat or you can just do in your head, and a lot of you are nailing it already, mindfulness is the simple act of being entirely present for the moment at hand and whatever it is that you are doing or experiencing in that moment. Now, for many of us, a great example of this is something super commonplace like washing the dishes, right? Okay, so that's a time where we can totally go on autopilot and just kind of get it done as soon as possible. But what if we were to slow down and really dig into the experience of washing the dishes as if it were for the first time, right? So, tuning in to the temperature of the water on your hands, paying attention to watching the soap and the bubbles wash off the residue on the plates, becoming aware of your other senses that are involved, the smell of the dish soap, right? The visual of the bubbles of the dish soap. So that's one example. Another example I love to share is driving. For those of us who drive, that's an easy opportunity to kind of click into autopilot. And I'm probably not alone when I share that there's been times where I arrived at the destination and I realize, oh my goodness, I don't even remember getting there, right? So that's another great opportunity to dig into the act of mindfulness and really feel the texture of the steering wheel beneath your palms. Feel the resistance of the gas pedal and the brake pedal beneath your feet. Tune into the sound of the blinker, the sounds of the surrounding traffic. So these are real life examples where we can be incorporating and practicing mindfulness in our day to day. All right. So, yes, you all who shared nailed it in that mindfulness is being present in the moment. And we can add on the layer that it's being present in the moment without judgment. And by judgment, I mean that it is very natural in the human brain to assess, right? And to immediately label things as good, bad, right, or wrong. And so, without judgment requires that present moment awareness where simply we are allowing, we are witnessing, resisting that urge to label and to define. Okay, so then we move into meditation. Meditation is a structured practice that cultivates mindfulness. Many of you shared that you've had a meditation practice for quite some time. And it's interesting that mindfulness and meditation go so hand in hand that we often start by discovering one, and that becomes the gateway drug to discovering the other. So for me, I have had a daily meditation practice for, gosh, 15 years now. And whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's that act, that ritual of, coming to the proverbial cushion and dropping in as a way to start my day. And that is what ultimately led me to discovering and starting to incorporate mindfulness into my life. So if you have one practice, trust that it is a beautiful bridge to the other. Okay, so how do mindfulness and meditation relate to yoga? Well, combined, when we combine all three, they create the trifecta of presence, peace, and self awareness. So, mindfulness really helps our students stay present in each pose. We've all been in a yoga practice where, yeah, we're in warrior two, but really in our minds, we're thinking about our grocery list. So, when we incorporate mindfulness into our teaching, this helps our students really stay present, which in turn helps to prevent those distractions and deepen their awareness. And hey, I'm also not promising that incorporating mindfulness will make your student have a full 60 minutes of, perfect concentration. No, because we're all humans, right? But the success comes when we can first allow our students to experience it just for a moment, right? And then next time, maybe it's for 2 moments. And then finally, it gets to a point where they're dropping in for longer and longer. And that's where the practice gets really good. So, meditation, as many of us know, fosters a deeper connection between movement and breath, enhancing the mind body experience. Probably many of us have heard that yoga can be a meditation in motion. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. How can we cultivate and create a container for our students, the experience of a moving meditation? So, integrating mindfulness allows our yoga practice to extend beyond the mat and into our daily life. Because, as we know, everything that we practice on the mat really prepares us for when we step off it and go back into our days. So, we are here to help our students cultivate self compassion, patience, and non judgment in their practice. And this is a great path to do precisely that. So, why does mindfulness matter in yoga? Well, it deepens our students' experience, as I mentioned. It also enhances your presence as a teacher, right? Because just as I can be in Warrior 2, but I'm really thinking about my grocery list, as teachers, especially if we're teaching kind of the same format, when I was a new teacher, I was teaching a set sequence. And I taught that set sequence for 4 years straight. And so you can imagine that even just a few months into teaching that set sequence 5 times a week, I could go through that in my sleep. So the mindfulness component is what keeps us as teachers engaged, present, and allows us to have a deeper awareness of the room and the environment for our students. Finally, for our students, mindfulness does help with their safety because they are embodied in their practice. They are present to the sensations and they are less likely to push through pain or to take on a pose that might not feel right in their body. So mindfulness, and we're going to geek out a moment and get into the science here in just a bit, but mindfulness helps to reduce stress and promote that present moment awareness. I think we can all agree that the world feels crazier and more chaotic than ever. And so when our students arrive on their mats, that's a victory in and of itself. But more importantly, once they're there, we now have the opportunity and the responsibility to cultivate as peaceful and as present of an experience for them as possible, as a way for them to leave all of that at the door and be able to drop in fully to their bodies, their breath, and to the present moment. So, from here, that results in being able to down regulate their nervous system. So, when we all know the term fight or flight. And so when we are in a state of fight or flight, which doesn't just happen when we are running from a saber-toothed tiger, but it also happens when we receive a stressful email, when we get caught in traffic, when we're running late to yoga, right? When we downregulate our nervous system, what we do is we help switch it from the fight or flight to the rest and digest. And that's when the real magic happens. That's when real healing and positive shift can take place. And then, as I mentioned, we also help them cultivate deeper concentration and focus and aid in emotional regulation. So another form of or another term for emotional regulation is self-soothing. So these are practices that we and our students can employ to help regulate our emotions and soothe in the moment so that we can down-regulate our nervous systems. All right, so more benefits of incorporating mindfulness into your yoga teaching: stress relief, improved focus, safer practice, as I mentioned, a more fulfilling experience overall, and most importantly, in my opinion, helping them to apply this in all areas of their lives. So, for teachers specifically, for all of you, one huge benefit of mindfulness is that you can avoid teacher burnout. And if you feel inspired to share in the chat, let us know if you've experienced teacher burnout. I'm also a teacher for yoga teacher trainings, and that's a big part of it for me. Is I emphasize the importance of teachers maintaining their personal practice, practicing with a wide variety of other teachers, which, shameless plug, using my app YA Classes is a great opportunity to do that because our team of teachers are highly experienced and fantastic in their formats and disciplines. And so practicing with teachers like that enriches your own ability to teach and keeps you feeling fresh and inspired. It also deepens your intentionality, right? So it gives you a focal point for your classes. When you show up to teach, you've already got this built in layer. You know that you can incorporate this element of mindfulness, and that can be your ongoing theme. It also deepens your impact as a teacher. You already give so much to your students, and I really want to take a moment and acknowledge that your work is so important. And thank you for showing up in the world in this way because the world needs you. This is a past webinar that I taught for beYogi, which was the concept of self promotion, not from a place of, hey, support me, come to my class, da da da, but more so from the place of, you have these gifts and you have something to offer and to impact your students. And so to not promote would be a disservice to these potential students. This also establishes further credibility and support for your community. It cultivates a stronger connection with your students. We've all had a teacher, right, who just really spoke to us heart and soul. And they really, really felt like their teaching connected to us and our needs and our values. So, this is what that can help deepen for you as well. And finally, it creates a safe and more impactful container for the shared experience. All right. So, as promised, we're going to dive into some science. So, the neuroscientific research highlights, there's a lot of them here. So, I'm just going to list off a few. First of all, mindfulness meditation has been shown in studies to increase gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. This in turn strengthens its ability to regulate emotions, as we talked about, to enhance cognitive function and improve your overall mental resilience. These are big ticket items, right? And so, gray matter consists of the neural cell bodies that process information and facilitate communication within the brain. So, the prefrontal cortex is a region in the brain that's responsible for our decision making, our impulse control, and emotional regulation. That keeps coming up, right? And so, the mindfulness meditation is directly impacting and improving all of these very important functions in the brain and as a result in the nervous system. So, as we talked about the fight or flight, the amygdala is responsible for processing emotions, but particularly fear and stress responses. So, our regular mindfulness practice can reduce activity in the amygdala, which leads to a calmer nervous system, which is that down regulation that we were talking about before. And so from there, it can help to lower cortisol levels, which cortisol is the stress hormone in the body. And it can improve our emotional resilience. So it reduces our overall stress and anxiety levels. We all know how key that is right now, right? So it also helps to strengthen the connections between brain regions responsible for attention, improving focus, and concentration. And so that's an important one as well because this helps our students really dig in to the practice and the present moment at hand in a way that is deeply beneficial for them, mind, body, emotion. All right, so we hear a lot in the wellness space about the vagus nerve, not like Las Vegas, Vegas as in VAGUS, and maybe you've also heard of vagal toning. So there are many practices that support the vagus nerve through vagal toning, many of which are in my new book of 101 mindfulness practices for anxiety. And so the vagus nerve is the key component of the parasympathetic nervous system. Um, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest functions of the body. This regulates heart rate, digestion, and emotional responses. So, again, a really big and important piece of this mindfulness practice is its direct benefits on these bodily functions. So, enhancing our vagal tone strengthens the vagal nerve's function and it promotes relaxation and a greater ability to manage stress effectively, whether that's on or off the mat. So, finally, another term that we hear a lot, kind of a buzzword, right, in the wellness space is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. So, mindfulness and meditation supports neuroplasticity by strengthening and creating new neural connections, new neural pathways, and it enhances our brain's ability to adapt, to learn, and to recover from stress. So, mindfulness meditation promotes plasticity, which in turn reinforces our pathways associated with cognitive flexibility and, of course, emotional regulation. Okay, that was a lot. That was your dose of science for this practice, but I really do hope that that helped to further explain and emphasize the incredible benefits that we stand to gain through practicing mindfulness and that your students stand to gain as well. Okay, so let me just check the chat here before we dive into the next section. Okay, seems like we're all still good. All right. How do we go about integrating mindfulness into our yoga classes? So, first of all, I broke it up into before class, during, and closing out the practice. So, before class, offering a few grounding techniques. And by that, I simply mean, right, as students are trickling in, before you begin the physical practice, you can invite everyone to find a comfortable seat, a child's pose, lying down in shavasana, or even take their legs up the wall, anything that helps them to tap into their bodies and to feel a sense of grounding before we start the movement practice. The next part is intention setting. So many of us as teachers will offer up an intention or invite our students to set their own intention for the practice. And this is a simple and powerful way to help our students really pull their intention through the practice in a way that helps them maintain that being focused and mindful through each moment. So, not just inviting them to set the intention or setting one with them at the beginning, but then taking it a step further by finding ways to weave it throughout. So every time you have them pause, you have them revisit the intention. And finally, breath awareness. So, breath awareness is not necessarily a specific breathing technique as much as it is the invitation for them to really drop into the awareness around their natural breathing, right? What is the consistency of your breath? If you're feeling stressed out, perhaps it's pretty shallow and it's in your chest and it's short, deep little gasps. Not deep, short, shallow little gasps. So inviting them to tune in, and again, getting all the way back to that definition of mindfulness, inviting them to tune in without judgment. So inviting them to notice, oh, yeah, I am taking those shallow sips of air, but without then labeling it as, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. That's wrong, right? Just becoming aware. It's a good thing to understand if we're versus if we're right? Okay. During class, just as we talked about weaving that intention throughout, we can do the same with the breath awareness. Now, this comes pre-packaged, if you will, for certain formats of yoga more than others. If you're teaching a vinyasa class, linking breath to motion throughout the practice, then bam, you're already doing that. But whatever format it is that you're teaching, you can invite students to pause, take a deep inhale through their nose, take a deep sigh out their mouth, and then continue into the next pose. Have them pause again in their warrior two or in a challenging hold and say, how is your breath texture now? What can you do to deepen and slow the breath down? One aspect, one tool of teaching mindfulness in our classes is asking questions. So instead of always prescribing, do this, how is this, do this should feel like this, asking questions. How is your breath as we move into a more challenging part of the class? How is your breath as we hold this plank pose for a little longer than you want to? Mindful movement. So, two forms of movement, right? Going through the motions, not really thinking much about it, especially for more experienced practitioners, that's common, right? Versus when we slow it down, which doesn't even have to mean literally slowing down the movement, but slowing down the energy to say, hey, as you ground your foot, feel your heel connect to the earth as you flatten the sole of your foot and finally spread all five toes and press them evenly into the mat. So that feels a lot different than plant your foot or step your foot up between your hands, right? So incorporating that mindful movement as you inhale forward into plank from your down dog, try to articulate each individual vertebra in the spine like a string of pearls as you pull your spine straight into that plank position. Inhale as you engage your abdominal muscles and use them to gently pull your hips back as you press your body back into your downward dog shape. Taking a moment here to feel the weight spread equally through each fingertip in your palms as you let your head hang heavy, right? So, just an example of how we can incorporate mindful movement into our cueing and our teaching to really encourage our students to, yeah, you can shift forward from down dog into plank and shift back and say to yourself, oh, that feels a little challenging in my wrists and my shoulders and my core. Or you can kind of narrate it the way that I just demonstrated in such a way that really allows the student to experience every little aspect. And just imagine how much that can enrich their overall experience. So, Sankalpa is another form of an intention or the purpose for our practice. So, for those of you who like to teach with themes, that can be a really fun way to deepen the mindful aspect as you move through the class. And even the drishti. So, in yoga, the drishti is the point of focus, the place that we set our gaze in a particular pose. And so, inviting them to use the theme of the drishti in every posture is just another example of a way that we can really dig in to that present moment mindful awareness. Closing class, having a moment to take a gratitude reflection, right? So, as they're doing their final stretches before Shavasana, asking them a question like, bring something to mind that you are grateful for in this moment, or someone, or something about yourself. Recently, I shared during Shavasana, I want you to think of 3 things that you are grateful for. I gave them the moment, and then I followed up with, everyone's lying down, no one can see. Just by a show of hands, did anyone choose themselves as one of the things they were grateful for? And in a room of 25 students, I think one person did. So, doing little fun, thought provoking questions like that is a great way to encourage more mindfulness within each of your students. Shavasana meditation. So, not to give it away, but the mindfulness practice that I will share with you all today is something that I do during my student Shavasana often. And it's a way for them to really get deeper into that state of relaxation and that state of total embodiment in a pose that, is often said Shavasana is the hardest yoga pose we can practice. And for many of us, it's because of that mental element. If we're lying in stillness, it can be easier for our minds to wander, our thoughts to drift. And so, offering a Shavasana meditation is such a potent way to really help our students maintain that mindfulness through the very end of their practice. And if I were going to pick just one out of all of these aspects, it would be that guided meditation, which doesn't have to be during their Shavasana. It can be to open the practice, right? It can be when you bring them into a 10 breath child's pose break in the middle of class. So I share all of these little commentaries to help get your brain working of, oh yeah, I could incorporate it this way, right? Finally, yoga nidra. So this is a new blossoming passion of mine, is offering yoga nidra at the end of my practice. So I'm just curious if you'd like to share if you have experienced yoga nidra, if we have any yoga nidra teachers. Excuse me. I'm in Colorado, as I mentioned, and it's really cold and really dry. So I've got a little perpetual frog in my throat. But yoga nidra is often referred to as yogic sleep. Okay, so we have someone who's taken a workshop on it, someone who has practiced it. And so, yoga nidra is essentially a deeply relaxing, guided meditation and visualization in a way that really helps our students drop in fully to the present moment, and also get to the point where they might even feel a little out of body. So they drop in fully to their bodies, and at times they might even feel like they've um they've reached a deeper state than that. So yeah, we have some teachers, we have some people who have practiced it. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm very passionate about it. We have a few excellent nidra teachers on our platform, and it's a very nourishing practice. So okay, from here we go. Okay, mindfulness teaching cues. So I know I gave you a little taster of this earlier, but using language to encourage presence. And one of the ways that I really like to do that is asking questions, because this gets our students to tap into their own body awareness. um, and I'll get to some examples of that in just a moment. So another way to do it is offering more of almost that guided meditative aspect in your cueing. So, for example, instead of saying something as simple as, hold warrior two for 3 breaths, while we're having them stay in warrior two for 3 breaths, we can say something like, feel the strength and stability of your stance. Notice the power in grounding down through all 4 corners of your feet, right? So noticing the shift between telling them, prescribing the pose, right? Hold warrior three, versus really narrating, what are you feeling in this posture? So another variation of that is instead of take a deep breath, right? Which that could constitute a deep breath. When we say gently begin to deepen your breathing, feeling expansion with each inhale and softening our bodies with each exhale. So that difference creates such a deeper experience of sensations for our students. And final one I'll say here is instead of relaxing the shoulders, saying something like, notice any tension in your shoulders and invite them to soften as you continue to breathe deeply. Okay, so now some simple breath work and body scan techniques. Probably many of us are already incorporating some aspect of this into your practice. This can be a nice compare and contrast. So an example of that right away, bring awareness to the natural rhythm of your breath without changing it. And so, what I love about that is we're getting back to that concept of non judgment, right? So, we're simply becoming aware of what our natural breath is in this moment. Next one, and here comes our questions where we can start to be asking some questions as well. As you inhale, feel the breath. And actually, let's do this one together, shall we? So sit up nice and tall, act as if you're the student in class, and I'm about to have you do a few rounds of breathing. So, as you inhale through the nose, feel your breath moving coolly through each nostril, expanding into your chest. Can you allow your breath to expand all the way down into your rib cage with your next inhale? And as you exhale, feel the gentle release. Can you detect the slightly warmer sensation of the air as it leaves your nostrils? So, someone once taught that to me as you exhale, can you become acutely aware of that space directly beneath your nostrils? So, as you take a deep breath out through your nose, are you able to tap in to that little space and feel that air on the patch of skin? And even deeper, can you detect that subtle shift in temperature? All right. So another great example is now this is if you had a student in a standing pose, right? So let's say we had our student in a standing Tadasana, mountain pose. Very common, very basic posture. It's easy for people to just stand there and wonder, why are we even in this pose? Let's get to the good stuff. But if we bring them into this pose and we now say, bring your attention to the soles of your feet, can you tune in to the grounding sensation of your feet connecting to the floor and the earth beneath you, rising up to support you? And slowly begin to bring your awareness up your body, observing any areas of tension or of ease as you continue to scan upward. So, these are lovely little examples that you can incorporate into your teaching that really help to deepen the experience. All right. So, without further ado, we have spent a good amount of time discussing these cues and the different ways that we can be incorporating it, now it's your opportunity to relax and receive. So, as I mentioned before, this will be about a 5-minute practice, and it is great if you can simply, where you are, be seated and get nice and comfortable. If you prefer to lie down, please feel free. And I'll give you just a moment to get ready for that. And as you receive this guided mindfulness practice, just allow yourself to observe the parts that really speak to you. Because as we know as teachers, not everything that each of us teach is going to resonate with everyone that we're teaching to, and that's okay. And that goes for me too, as the teacher for our webinar today. So as you experience it, simply become aware of what really does resonate and what you would love to pull from in your own teaching. Okay? So if you're seated, sit up nice and tall, roll your shoulders back and down, take a deep breath in and out. And if you feel comfortable, you'll begin to close your eyes. Otherwise, allow your gaze to soften and unfocus. And if you're lying down, same thing. Allow your entire body to be heavy, to relax, to soften, and to deepen into the surface beneath you. So begin to deepen your breathing ever so slightly in and out through your nose. And as you continue to breathe with every inhale, follow the breath up. And with every exhale, allow your awareness to follow it back out. And as you continue to breathe, you'll notice that the breath begins deep, deep in your stomach. And as you continue to breathe, it will expand through the ribs and ultimately all the way up through your collarbone. And as you exhale your breath out through your nose, you'll feel all of that begin to lower. The collarbone, the chest, and the ribs. Gently pressing navel towards your spine with each exhale, using your strength to press that old air out, so that as you inhale again, you create fresh space. And I invite you to follow your breath in and out for a few rounds here. Some visualizations that might feel supportive here are viewing your lungs like balloons with every breath, watching the balloons inflate and expand. And with every exhale in your mind's eye, envisioning them slowly emptying until they're completely empty again. Another visualization that you might appreciate is envisioning the air as it enters and leaves your nose as a colored vapor or mist. So as you breathe in, you can breathe in your favorite color, perhaps a rich emerald green like the heart chakra, or a beautiful rose quartz pink. And so you breathe that in, receiving it from your surroundings. And then you breathe it out and you send it and release it back. Good. I'll give you another few moments to continue following your breath in and out as you work with one of these visualizations. Good. Now we'll experience a subtle rotation of consciousness. And so you'll release the focus on your breath and allow your breath to fall back to its natural rhythms. As we now bring all of our awareness to the sole of the left foot. Bringing your awareness now to the top of your left foot and down to each of your 5 toenails on the left side. Pulling your awareness now to the 5 right toenails, the top of your right foot, rotating your awareness to the bottom of your right foot, slowly pulling your awareness up into your right ankle and calf. And as you do this, as I continue to guide you through this body scan, keep in mind that this is a beautiful offering during Shavasana. This can be a gateway to a guided yoga nidra practice. It can also be shortened into the opening of your class. It can also be adapted to have them do it while they're in a pose for a little longer. So now coming back to your body scan, bringing your awareness to your right knee, your right quadricep muscle, the back of the right thigh, and into the right hip joint, across your lower abdominals, onto your left hip joint, the back of your left leg, the front of your right leg, both legs. As you breathe in, pull your awareness up across your stomach, your rib cage, pausing your awareness over your heart center, the space of love, receiving love, bringing back to your mind's eye that beautiful, rich emerald green hue. And now I invite you to work with that emerald green color as you pull that light of awareness up over your collarbones, over your throat, the throat chakra, the space of communication. Pull that awareness down over your left shoulder and your left arm, into the left wrist, into each of your left fingertips, perhaps touching each individual fingertip to your left thumb. And with your next inhale, envision that emerald green light washing up and over your left arm and back across your collarbones, into the right shoulder, the right arm, down into the right hand and each of your right fingertips. Begin to touch each individual fingertip to your right thumb. And once that is complete, inhale your emerald green light of awareness all the way back up the right arm, all the way back up the throat once more, to the back of the neck, to the base of the skull, to the top of your scalp. Pausing here, are you able to relax your scalp? Pulling your awareness over your forehead. And once more, are you able to relax the forehead, the eyebrows, the space between the eyebrows? The eyelids are soft and heavy. Pulling down your awareness into your jaw, softening and relaxing the jaw. And with your next inhale, breathe in that emerald green light, breathe in a little more and hold your inhale at the top. Take an extra sip. And with your exhale, an open mouth sigh, as you send that emerald green light down your entire body, enveloping it fully. And we'll take a final moment here to rest in this mindful stillness that we have created together. With your next breath, begin to deepen your breathing, taking a deep breath in through your nose and a deep breath out. Begin to bring some movement into your body, perhaps a few shoulder rolls, perhaps rolling your head from side to side. And then slowly opening your eyes as you're ready. Joining us back, seated if you're not there already. Hmm. And if you feel so inclined to share, I would love to hear how that went for you. If you had any questions or insights or anything that came up. Good, very relaxing. Great, mission accomplished. If you attend a webinar today to enrich your teaching, then you absolutely deserve a little rest and relaxation there. Good, nice and peaceful. That's what I love to hear. Good. My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me for that practice. So, from here, let's discuss a few resources and final takeaways. So, first, on the right column, you will see that I've added some resources if you are interested in learning more about mindfulness, about mindfulness meditation, and how to incorporate these aspects into your life, your personal practice, and of course, your teaching. Um, each of these books are excellent in their own right. Many of us are probably familiar with TKV Deskachar. The Heart of Yoga is a beautiful resource for integrating what we've talked about today. And, pardon me, it's just out of my reach. As we mentioned at the beginning of our webinar, my new book, 101 Mindfulness Practices, which is blurring, is officially coming out in April. It is available for pre-order and it offers 101 mindfulness practices with an entire chapter dedicated to yoga, another chapter dedicated to breath work, another chapter dedicated to meditation, and then two more chapters of techniques and different mindfulness practices for you and your students to benefit from. If any of you happen to be authors, I want to share something I learned recently, which is pre-orders actually dictate the success of a book. And so it's actually the pre-order phase that is really important for a new book launch. So if you feel so inclined, I would deeply appreciate your support if you'd like to share with your community and or pre-order a copy for yourself. So your homework, your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is to try integrating one new mindfulness technique into your classes this week. So that's a fun way to action the insight. So you've gained a lot of insight today. And so now is the best time for you to action it and to put it into practice. So that is your homework. And I would love to stay connected and to hear from you how that goes and what questions come up. And I know that I spoke about mindfulness and meditation sometimes separately and sometimes interchangeably, and that's because they are so closely connected. So this is our opportunity to ask any questions, if any questions came up for you. Thank you so much for your sweet comments about the book. And yes, my book is available on Amazon, both in print and as an ebook, and I believe Shannon will be sharing the link. Thank you all so much for that. And this is time for Q&A. I'm just going to turn it to the next slide so that you are able to take down any ways that you would like to connect with me or to learn more about me, my book, or my platform YA classes. So, any questions?
Just going to jump in here. Feel free to use the chat or the question and answer feature at the bottom bar of Zoom.
Mm.
I just want to say to you, Ashton, thank you so much for a wonderful webinar. We always love to have you. It's always great. To our audience, thank you so much for being here. I did drop some links to Ashton's personal website and to the UAlign website. And just as a reminder, we will be sending out a follow-up email with the recording, links to Ashton's new book, her other novels that she's written, and her links as well.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Looks
Um,
like we have a question.
yes, I
Uh,
see two questions in the chat, so I will address those. And then if you do see any more questions through the Zoom feature, please let me know. I'm not sure if I'm seeing that on my end.
Perfect.
Um, Okay, so I'm going to start off with Doris. I believe that's the first question I saw came through. Doris asks, what are indications that students are not into the mindfulness aspect and when to change the language? Yes, Doris, thank you so much for asking this question. Um, this reminds me that I somehow skipped over one slide, which is this one. Number one, my students just want to work out. This can happen, especially based on where you're teaching. If you're teaching at a gym or anything like that, this can absolutely happen. So in this case, there are more subtle ways to weave mindfulness in. So we're not turning anyone off or making anyone feel intimidated if you're getting the sense that this just feels too deep, too woo-woo, whatever it is. So in that case, I would say to start with some of the simpler, shorter practices that we reviewed towards the beginning, like having them sit down and take 3 deep breaths at the start of class, and then choose a word that they would like to focus on for the practice, like peace or presence. So that feels really beginner friendly. It feels accessible and it feels relatable for those who are more fitness minded or not really into the mindfulness thing. So that's a good way to go about it. You can also help to reframe, if you're looking at number two on the right side of this slide, reframe mindfulness as a part of yoga because truly it is. So, to simply help inform students a little bit that a key aspect of yoga is that meditative element. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit in lotus pose for an hour in complete stillness, but it can mean that you breathe deeply as you move through each pose and thereby help to make it a meditation in motion. So there's other ways like that where we can kind of just plant little seeds and then water them over time as opposed to giving them the whole garden at once. So Doris, let me know if that's helpful or if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you so much. Every question enriches the group experience. Okay, I'm going down to Kristen now. Kirsten, excuse me. Um, Oh, that was a comment more than a question, but thank you very much. Kirsten shares, I liked the rephrasing to a question. Right. So just to reiterate, that's another great way, even Doris, for Doris, to just help students kind of think for themselves about this rhetorical question that you're asking. Are you able to relax your forehead? Right? Someone could say no. That's okay. So thank you for sharing that, Kirsten. Shirley asks, I am going to be teaching to middle schoolers all day Thursday. Any tips or ideas for this age group? Oh, yeah, that's a great question because you're right. Um, a lot of what we discussed might not really carry over to the middle schoolers. So, middle schoolers, let's have them start off at a more entry level, right? So, what if you have all of them sit down and take 3 deep breaths and then have a little circle share where we go around the room and ask how we're feeling before and after those breaths. Right? Another thing you could have them do is everyone stand up and we're going to do 30 seconds of somatic shaking, which, if we're not familiar, it's shaking the arms, but also the legs and jumping up and down. So this will be fun. It feels silly. But somatic shaking is a really great way to downregulate the nervous system. Therefore, it counts under this umbrella of mindfulness. And so we can do things like that and then say, okay, everyone, take a seat and let's check in. How are we feeling? What came up for you? So for that age group, giving them fun, short experiences and then asking them about how that felt in their bodies, how it affected their mindset, their mood, that can be really helpful. I hope that was supportive. All righty. Let's see. Elaine,
So we,
thank you so much for sharing that other link for my book. I so appreciate you. Surely, yes, there will be a recording of today's webinar emailed out by tomorrow. Oh, Shannon answered that. Okay. Um,
yeah, we also came in.
oh,
There's just a
Shannon,
few questions through the Q&A actually.
perfect. And I'm so sorry you just cut out, but were you just essentially saying that you had a few more people ask
Yes.
questions?
Hmm.
I did, I did just see one more question in the chat, if that's okay, and then we can move to
Yeah,
the Q&A. Perfect.
perfect.
Judy asks, I often ask throughout the practice how a specific pose felt. Wonderful. How does one side feel different than the other side after that pose, for example? Oh, my bad, that wasn't a question, but thank you for sharing, Judy. That's excellent. And the side to side is also an excellent mindfulness practice because we all know sides are going to feel different. So thank you for contributing that. Okay, Shannon, what are the Q&As from the Zoom?
All right. So Jean asked, what was the significance of the left, right, left during the scan?
Ooh, okay. Thank you for asking. So, as I mentioned when we started the scan, I called it the rotation of consciousness. And so what this helps to do is to really pull the mind into focus because now we are going from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, right? So we're going left side body, right side body. So it's a really nice rotation in our consciousness to be pulling their awareness side to side. Because what can happen, and this happens a lot when people go into kind of autopilot during a yoga practice, is they can kind of detect what's coming next if you're like left foot, left leg, left arm, right foot, right leg. You know what I mean? And so by kind of keeping it fresh, the brain goes, oh, now we're going over here. Oh, now we're over here. So that's kind of that neuroplasticity component that I was mentioning earlier. And I really appreciate you asking that question. Thank you.
Perfect. We have a question from Desiree. Where can we pre-order your book? I can answer this for you, Ashton. You can actually pre-order on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and the other one is Tertulia. The links for the pre-order will be included in the webinar follow-up email.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone asking about my book, and that means so much to me. And yes, it will be in the follow-up email. And I just thought, you know what? Since people are asking, I'm just going to drop the Amazon link in the chat. Um,
Perfect.
that's a good start. But yes, Barnes& and Noble, Tertulia, thank you so much.
Awesome. Looks like we have a question from Joe Burke. Please give some examples of intentions.
Ooh, thank you, Joe. So the beauty of intentions is that it's limitless. So I will narrow it down specifically to the mindfulness aspect. So intentions can be as simple as a word: presence, peace, focus, awareness. And what's nice about a word is that they can repeat it in their mind's eye. And if any of you really latched on to that concept, I'll take it one step further. I often will bring pre-written little pieces of paper for each student, and it has a word already on it. And it's a mix of words, so you don't know what you're going to get, but I'll put that word at the top of their mats, and they have now the option to look down at that and come back to that phrase or word every single time. So that's one way. An intention can also be more of like a mantra or an affirmation. I am present. I am at peace. I am in the flow and all is well. So those can be really helpful because affirmations, especially when we put the I am in front, help us to really embody the energy behind that intention. So I'm a big fan of that. In fact, my second book is full of I am affirmations like that. And then finally, another intention can be more of a concept, of a notion. So you can ask people a question, right? We're all big fans of the questions now, at the beginning of class, like, what brought you onto your mat today? So, what are you working with in your life that this yoga practice can support? So often, right, people are going to rhetorically answer, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. Oh my gosh, I just need an hour to myself. Whatever it is, you can ask that question and then encourage them to create their own intention around their answer. So if I came because I am fully stressed out, then my intention could be I'm going to leave that stress at the door for the next hour. Maybe I'll pick it up on the way out, but for now, I'm safe in this space. I'm not going to touch it. I hope that was helpful, Joe.
Awesome. And then we have one last question and comment from Jean. The comment is thanks for the left, right, left explanation. That's a very interesting technique. And then their other question was also, is there a difference in your view between an intention and a sankalpa?
Hmm. So, of course, there will be varying opinions on this, and that's the beauty of yoga and different backgrounds and disciplines. To me, Sankalpa has always really embodied the concept of not just setting an intention, like we talked about with Joe's question, but also of arriving onto the mat with intentionality. So it's kind of twofold in that Sankalpa can be the intention that we set for our practice, and it can also be the intentionality, or in other words, the mindfulness aspect that we bring to every practice, if that makes sense.
Awesome, Ashton. Well, I think that that wraps up our Q&A. I want to thank you so much for your time. Third time's a charm for coming on and hosting with beYogi. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Amazing as always. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning into the beYogi webinar series. The follow-up email should be going out by tomorrow with the recording, Ashton's book links, her personal links, the U-Line links, and the presentation slides as well. So be on the lookout.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Shannon and Mariah and the beYogi team. And thank you to each and every one of you who attended or watched the recording. Shannon, I would love to come back to host another webinar. So, everyone, please let them know if you would like to see me back because I love these and I love our community here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye.